who being Justin and I, want to face off in round one of the playoffs, and just kind of a quick look back at this season and where we started to where we are now, and just our overarching thoughts. So I guess I'll kind of kick this one off here. So who's in the hunt right now? It's the Colts, it's the Patriots, and the Chargers, right? And there's some, in the hunt teams that could possibly make it, but it's looking like, as of right now, I think I saw a stat that it's 34% chance that we're going to get the Patriots. I don't necessarily want that, but I also kind of do. Bring them back to Orchard Park when the winds aren't going crazy. Let's see what happens then. But I'd rather, let's say the Raiders make it to the playoffs. I'd much, much, much rather play the Raiders, hands down, because I think that the Bills can easily hand that team an L. No disrespect to them again, but that's just how I personally feel. I definitely don't want to play the Colts, and not to say that I'm necessarily scared of the Colts. It's just that it's just a bad matchup. The Colts' strength is the rushing attack, and that seems to be the Achilles heel of the Buffalo Bills. We got them in the playoffs last year, but they definitely got us in the regular season this year. And then when it comes to the Chargers, yeah, Justin Herbert balling out a little bit, but I could see the Bills, kind of going at them too. But I guess if I had to put it in order for the current wild card teams, I would do Chargers, Patriots, Colts in that order.
Yeah, the Chargers are a team that I think would be a really interesting matchup. Their defense has really struggled this year, and I feel like they're still kind of in that getting their repetitions to kind of take the next step. The young quarterback, young coach, newer coach. So the Chargers are somebody that I wouldn't be all that concerned with matching up with, but I do think they could be a tough outing. As far as kind of the matchups go, how I feel about our team is there's nobody that really particularly, I'll say, scares me, because I think we have the talent to play with anybody in the league. I will agree with your statement on the Colts. If I had to pick, the one team I would really prefer not to see, it would be the Colts. And I think that's an interesting one because, I've heard a lot of chatter going around about they embarrassed us in the regular season. Let's get them in the playoffs where it really counts and get our revenge. I don't need that storyline going into a game to hype me up. It's the playoffs. We're already hyped up. And Jonathan Taylor, for my money, is the best running back in the league right now. And it's a similar situation to the first time we played New England. They won games with Carson Wentz throwing it 5-10 times because of how good Jonathan Taylor is. So I have no interest in that. The one I would kind of like to see is New England. And for me, that's more of I guess a closure thing of right when the Bills were kind of hitting their stride, and it, the old adage of to be the best, you have to beat the best. Well, as we started coming into our form, Tom Brady left the division. So we never really got our closure there of our best versus your best. So I'll say the next best thing for me would kind of be putting our money where our mouth is and being able to take down Belichick in the playoffs. So that's the one that I would be most interested in seeing.
Yeah, I guess if to add a quick note here, I'm at a coin flip when it comes to the Chargers or Patriots. Either one of them, yeah, fine, I'm cool with it. So it's very close on who I'd prefer to play. And then lastly, before we get out of here, let's just talk about where this season started to where we are now. lot of expectations going into the season. Super Bowl aspirations. I know you remember it if you weren't at the game that all the announcers were saying, I think the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl against, and this was right before the matchup against the Steelers, and we saw best odds by Vegas, yada, yada, yada. And I remember the painful trip down to earth after watching the Steelers get us. And that feeling kind of never really stopped because of the inconsistency of what the 2021/2022 Buffalo Bills are. And I guess I'll put it like this. Have my expectations changed? Of course. I never really thought at the end of the day, and I'm a superstitious kind of person, I never really want to speak into existence. Yeah, the Bills are going to win the you-know-what, because I'm not trying to say it. Because I wait in bated breath because I want to see it happen before I can say confidently something like that would happen. I've been burned too many times by this team, and not to say that the scars aren't deep, but they do. But going into this, my expectations right now have dropped just a little bit, right? I still think that the Bills, and as you mentioned, can go toe-to-toe with any team. That includes all the NFC teams. I really think that the Bills can go toe-to-toe with any of those teams. And I also think all playoff teams, wildcard teams, can go toe-to-toe with the Bills. It's just how it comes down to game day, how our coaching staff prepares against your team, and what we're going to do about it and how we're going to adjust. We've seen some really good adjustments. And I keep going back to the second half of the Buccaneers game. We definitely can do it. And then we've seen some not so great adjustments. The Colts. I like the game plan that they had against the Colts. Let's just try to stop Jonathan Taylor and then make Carson Wentz throw the football. They couldn't stop Jonathan Taylor, so Carson Wentz basically had to do nothing all day. It's that. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but when it's all said and done, I'm pretty much right where I started. And my expectations were get to the playoffs, win the division, and it's looking like that might happen.
Yeah, I think I like your line of thinking there, because with all those expectations going into the season, I think there's like a certain section of the fan base that, basically unless we win the Super Bowl this year, they're going to be disappointed. And I'm kind of
Every team's going to be disappointed if they don't win the Super Bowl.
Right. And I'm kind of like in your wavelength of thinking there. But I think it's partially like as a fan base of a team that was so bad for so long. I think we're still kind of adjusting as fans to knowing how to ride with this team. Mm-hmm. Like you said, there's 31 teams that don't win the Super Bowl every year. But for me, when I was thinking about this segment, I was thinking, it was kind of along the lines of like, is this team AFC Championship or bust? The season was pointless if we don't get back to the AFC Championship. And I can't get myself there. Mm-hmm. For how long this team, 17 years without even going to the playoffs, mm-hmm. and then switching that to 4 or 5 years, we're getting there. And yes, there does get to be a certain extent where just being in the playoffs isn't enough every year. You have to get over the hump at some point, but I also don't think we're in that mode right now where all the chips have to be in the table. Mm-hmm. We're talking the first year under McDermott was backing into the playoffs with, you remember the roster. We're talking Tyrod Taylor, Deontay Thompson. Mm-hmm. I can't even name half the players at this point. Mm-hmm. to looking at the team that we have built now and some of the cornerstone pieces, and now being able to look at, we can keep adjusting and rebuilding on the fly, and we have the base set up to be right about where we are for the next 5 to 10 years if we keep playing our cards right. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'd like to at least win a game or two in the playoffs. I'd love to make it to that word that you won't say. But for me, it's right. For me, it's kind of already looking back at the season as it's winding down, and it's still just being a lot of fun. And albeit it wasn't as sexy as last year, but we're in the dance, and everybody resets their record to 0-0 in a couple weeks. So glad to be there.